everyone, and welcome to the Padawan Unlimited podcast, the YouTube edition. Today, I'm excited to bring you a deck tech video on something that I've been cooking up over the past few weeks. This is a Rex Double Green Command deck with ECL Energy Conversion Lab as the 25-point base. I want to talk about how I created this deck beforehand and what I did to kind of test it. So that you understand where I'm coming from in terms of how it's been developed, and also maybe you might learn something if you are also getting into kind of developing decks for the first time. It is something that I did not do for set one or set two, but for set three because I've really got my legs underneath underneath me in terms of competitive play and just like understanding the game a little bit more. I was able to create a deck that might not be like a meta breaker, and like the one that's going to take the PQ. But, if you want to try something really fun, if you want to try something really new, relatively cheap in terms of, the kinds of cards that are in the deck, and then also, still have a challenging mental game in your head in terms of skill expression, because there's a lot of different calculations, a lot of different lines here. I would suggest that you try out this deck. So, before I begin and talk about the cards and the strategies on how to unleash the Attack of the Clones deck that I've made, I want to talk about how I developed it. So I started this off last week with Obi-Wan and talking about how I kind of create that shell, and I talked about certain ratios I might have. With this one, I'm going to explain a little bit more in depth of my training process and development process. So Rex, when I look at the leader, what is it trying to do? What he does is if a friendly unit attacked during the phase, you pay 2 resources and create a clone trooper token. So on its face, that's a really fun ability, and so he's meant to really go wide. When he flips his leader ability is he creates a token, and then he gives every trooper that is on the ground a +1 to health, not attack, health. So this is to me, it seems to be more about survivability. So this is, when you play Rex, the thought I had was that he's a go wide strategy, get to the mid game, and survive. Right? That's it's a war of attrition. And Captain Rex, who fought valiantly in the Clone Wars and beyond, is probably one of the most iconic characters for playing a war game in that sense. Knowing this strategy, I initially wanted to go wide as possible. And I really thought about chip damage and chip healing. So not really taking big chunks out of my opponent's base or units, just chip away at him or her until they are defeated by rounds 6 to 8. So kind of 6 to 9, though that mid game kind of level. Knowing that if you go wide really early and you're only doing chip damage and chip healing, so that's 2 damage here, 2 restore there, etc. Your late game was pretty kind of potentially lacking. So we had to find answers to that as well. And so when I go through the deck, you'll understand why. You'll see at least the process and why I selected the cards that I did and the ratios that I did. Once I thought about those cards, I always go through 3 steps of testing. The first step that I always take is, can I beat decks made a deck specifically on Force Table? If you're new to Star Wars Unlimited, right, and you're watching my channel, because that's really what I'm focused on, those new players, Force Table is an online platform that is really fantastic if you're trying to test something, because you face an AI. The AI takes very simplistic actions in 3 different ways. Either it's just like the best action on board, you can make it go aggro, or you can make it go kind of control-y, where it just tries to control the board. If my deck can't beat AI, it is like a very simple AI. It is not worth taking to any event or any casual event, anything, because it's losing to the most basic mechanics, right? So that's always my stress test. I always start off how out of all the meta decks that are out there, Sabine, right now, Django Tarkentown, Anakin Blue, can I beat them? The answer for this was yes. All right, well, I beat it. Obviously, there's things you need to do to tweak, so make those tweaks. And the next thing I usually do, whatever comes first, is either I take it to casual events like weekly plays, constructed, or I go to Carabas. Because Carabas has been kind of down for the past couple weeks, I took it to local events. And I'm happy to say that even with my minor tweaking, I have successfully been able to take wins at locals across a variety of stores. So I don't just play local events at one store. I usually go 2 or 3 throughout the week, sometimes 4 if I'm feeling spicy. And I bring my constructed deck, and I see if I can scoop some wins, which for this one, I usually go 2-1. right? A lot of my losses, if I have a bad week, is because I'm seriously just overthinking, or I just make really bad plays. And then whatever I don't do next, then I go on to like the other. So if I don't do locals, I go to Carabast. If I do low Carabast, I go to locals next. So I playing it on Carabast, it still feels good. I'm still taking wins. Obviously not against everything because this is not, the most competitive deck out there, right? But I'm taking wins against meta decks too. So when I'm playing against Django Tarkin Towns and I'm playing against Anakin Blues, I'm out 50-50, right? And to be clear, this sideboard that's on this video is still a work in progress. I like some of it. I kind of don't. The main 50 is fine. I have actually never sideboarded in any of my casual events, any of my weekly plays. So when I say I'm going 2-1, I'm going 2-1 without sideboarding. Uh, I've tweaked my deck, from event to event, but at the end of the day, like I think that's a clear indication of how good this deck could be. Again, I'm not saying it's going to win a PQ. It's going to be like the most awesome meta deck out there. I'm sure there's a lot of answers to it, particularly like hard control. But it is really, really fun. And we'll talk about that as we go on through the video. So anyway, just want to talk about that real quickly because I made the Obi-Wan deck last week. I know I'm kind of like a new name into the field in terms of Star Wars Unlimited. So I just wanted you to understand like what my process is, and if you think that process should change before I kind of create these videos, let me know. I'm always happy to get new feedback. I mean, I learn from as much as you guys in terms of the comments. I'm learning something new all the time, so I really encourage it. Okay, so let's go into the deck. So as you can see, I have a lot of turn one plays. Like I have a lot of options, and that is by design. I have, the Vanguard Infantry, 3 to 30-second Stalwart, Battlefield Marine, Colonel Yularen, Republic Tactical Officer. Some of these are better targets than others, obviously, because you don't want to waste Republic Tactical Officer. Republic Tactical Officer is more of like a turn 2, 3, 4, 5 play because you want him to pump in terms to do some reach. But the Vanguard Infantry is at 30-second Stalwart. I've done that too and lost initiative, which is fine because I have 2 units on the board. They can ping one. It's okay. Uh, they might waste a Tarkin Town on one, which would be really helpful. I love that. But if when all else fails, a Battlefield Marine or Colonel Yularen up front is still really really fine. When we go into the 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 3 resource turn, there's a lot of options here, and it's fantastic. Sometimes, so let's say you are second and you haven't you didn't have initiative. That's okay because assuming you have a 5 first Liberator, if they went to your base first, heal it right up. And now you have 2 units on the board, 30 and 30-second Stalwart, a Vanguard Infantry, 3/3 drop. You just healed 3, and then now you activate Coordinate. If not, maybe you just throw your Echo Base Defender. That's great too. I try not to necessarily unless I have to because I don't want it to get pinged down and Tarkin Town. Admiral Akbar is, if you play him on the 3 turn, you can do removal. So they use their Tarkin Town. You could potentially remove a unit off the board with just playing Admiral Akbar because of his when played ability. If they're going to space, Republic Arc 170. Again, lots of options here. Colonel Yularen also gives you, or Admiral Yularen gives you restore and boost your troopers. There's a lot going on here. I love this turn because it really sets the tone for the rest of the game. If you go to 4 resources, very light here, Bright Hope, Command. That's, again, by design, really going low to the ground. I might play, attack with a unit and then create a clone trooper at this point. But if I have command, more often than not, what I do is I pump whatever's on the board so that, it gets out of reach. I can give it 2 experience points. And then I will almost always make another resource. And I say that because then you're at 5 resources at that turn, and then you can deploy Captain Rex, which means that for the next turn, which means that you are ahead and you can activate Coordinate for Ayla at any given point in the future. Because by that point in time, they probably already used up their resources or they don't have an answer for what you have on the board, because you'll have 1 or 2 units from the previous turns. You'll have Rex. You'll have a clone trooper token. You're in a really good position, and you're up tempo. At the 5 drop turn, this is where again another decision point on depending on how the game is going. You'll see a lot of different 1 drops, 2 drops here. I didn't really. For me, it's all about having the options. I know statistically speaking, you probably want to have a 3 drop to increase your chances of doing it, but they all are fundamentally good in certain ways. this is a very space light deck. So having that Marauder out at 5 potentially gets you an additional resource to get you to get you faster. It gives you an ambush to get rid of early space units. It's a 4 or 5 in space. It's pretty good. It's nice to have that option at 5. Steadfast Battalion is great because when you're flipping at 5, you're gonna be at 6 when they're flipping at 5. Ideally, you probably still have Commander Captain Rex on the board, so that means that you can ECL a Steadfast Battalion, and you can get rid of pretty much any leader that's on the board immediately, which is fantastic. Or if they decided to do like a Yoda with Jedi lightsaber, take that down too, right? Commander Cody, if this is a new opponent, and if a new opponent and they're just letting you kind of run the floor with a lot of units, put Commander Cody on. He's also really good at a 5 drop. Kind of clunky, not always the best thing to do. But if you can get him steady now, that early in the game, he really churns out some good stuff in terms of the +1/+1, overwhelm, etc. And then Ayla, no brainer. You're probably gonna have coordinates still up. You can ECL her in to defeat a unit, get board even better board control. She's 6/5, and you're taking no damage back. That's fantastic. A lot of options at 5 for now and even later in the game. There's only one 6 drop that I have here, General Riken. General Riken, again, I usually save him for an ECL turn because if you ECL him, he get the wind plate and on attack ability, which I didn't learn until this set, like really think about it because not many people used him. But he becomes a 6/8. And if you ECL him in 6/8 because you get the Sentinel and an experience point, that is amazing. Which reminds me, I didn't actually talk about one of the first things up on this deck, which is Confiscate. I have 2 main board Confiscates here because the meta currently has a lot of Boss Blues, Anakins, and a lot of just blue in general, right? A lot of control. What this does is that it removes that upgrade. So if someone puts a bounty on me, taking it out. If they put Perilous Position on one of my units, which they 100% will, especially on Ayla or General Riken, take that off, right? I think that's really important to have in this meta, specifically against other control-y type decks. If they put Entrenched on you, remove it. It's really kind of an anti-blue kind of card, but if you're placing Sabine and they decide to have a Jedi, not a Jedi lightsaber, a Mandalorian dark saber, remove it, right? There's a lot of good stuff to have to do with Confiscate, and that's why I have it on the main board. So then when you get to 7 to 9 resources, this is where like you are, there's a lot of thinking that needs to occur. Because this is where your tiny units, start to get outclassed, and we don't have a lot of 7 drop, 8 drop, 9 drop answers, right? I have 2 home ones here. If you need to get into the space, and then you could drop a Sentinel on ground, so you have presence on both. Ewing Reinforcement has been come in clutch every single time. With Ewing Reinforcement, there's a lot of specific combos you might want. If you can't get a Sentinel, there's still a lot you can do because you can drop, for example, Admiral Yularen, Vanguard Infantry, 501st Liberator, right? That's 3 units, and you get to heal 3. Or you can do Colonel Yularen, right? Drop him first, heal 1. Vanguard Infantry, heal 1. Republic, 501st Liberator, you heal 3 more on top of that, so that's 5 heals, like 5 restoring 5 with 1 Ewing Reinforcement. That's also really good. Again, there's a lot of different things here that, depending on the board state, you want to do. And you're going to pretty much Ewing Reinforcement every turn if you have that. Which then leads to my next card, Choose Sides. Choose Sides is the answer that I have currently to the games that go longer, especially against other mid-range and or control decks, right? They throw in an Avenger. I'm popping this. I'm popping this and I'm taking it from him. If they throw out a Cad Bane, right, and they capture 3 of your units, you can at the 8 resource turn, you can drop a Vanguard Infantry, and you could choose sides and take it back. This is where if they're doing Zuckuss or that entire combo, take one of those units back. This card has come in clutch. I've taken Luke's, I've taken Cad Bane's, I've taken Avenger, I've taken the whole gambit, and it feels so good because all you really need is 8 resources to pull it off. You know, if they get one hit on your base and you swap it again, you just swap it later. It feels really, really good. And then just a standard closer that you see in a lot of other decks, right, is the Reinforcement Walker, 6/9, 8 body. You know, have it when played, you get to look at the top card, you get some healing. Assuming you're already stabilized, that's okay. So when we look at this deck, there's all again, the strategy is go wide as possible, chip away at the enemy state at the enemy base throughout the game, stabilize at 5 6, and then start ramping up and at 7, and then you should be able to close out the game. Against aggro, you have a lot of like walls, I'll say, and a lot of interesting removals and just heals. I will say that this deck, you're kind of living on a razor's edge at any given point. I mean, I usually by six resources, I'm about almost at 20 damage to the energy conversion lab, and that's where I need to like really start putting up the brick walls. It's really tight. It's a really intense deck to play, and there's a lot of things you have to think about. Like I mentioned, there's specific when you do U-wing reinforcement. How do you optimize for healing if you're not putting down sentinels, right? Is it appropriate to throw a command and then make it a resource, or should you do something else with it, right? Uh, there's so much to think about, but it's so much fun. And when you actually get it clicking, and when because I have at certain games, I have like 6, 7, 8 units on the board, a lot of clones, and my opponent has no idea what to do. There's natural counters to this deck, of course, like hard control, aka Snoke. But again, some of those answers right there are choose sides. For example, try to get that off if you can at like a 9 resource turn. It's possible. It's difficult because a smart opponent won't let you do that. But there's a lot of recovery here, even with Super Laser Blast, because you can always just U-ring reinforcement like 5 different units. And then if you're attacking with one of them, again, Rex for 2. So there's a lot of optimizational choices you have to make. Really fun. Again, a lot of skill expression you have to present in order to be successful in this deck, which I have done. Again, with consistently recording 2 1s against meta decks. Again, my sideboard is a work in progress, but working on certain discords and seeing what people are playing, I've started to create a pattern here. I have timely intervention in terms of ambush, having an ECL, and then the opportunity to ambush again and again always feels really good. And if you are 1 resource ahead because of command, it does feel pretty good to do. If your opponent isn't really removing your units and you feel comfortable doing so, I would then also resource Nameless Valor. Nameless Valor, if you attach it to a token unit, gains Overwhelm and becomes a 2/2. So if you attack, or you could play a 1 cost unit on, or you can attack with a unit on the second turn. Use pay 2 resources to create a token, and then you put one down and it becomes a 4/4. So on turn 2, you have a 4/4 unit with Overwhelm. That's pretty good. It's a pretty good combo. Outflank, if you're thinking about tempo, like let's say it's like essentially Rebel Assault just without the help, without the extra damage. That's always pretty good to have in terms of if you think you keep playing a little too slow and you need to chip a little faster, throw in an outflank there. Attack pattern delta, really experimenting with this. What I really think about with this card is that not necessarily to close out the game. But for me, I think of it in terms of at 5 resources, if I have initiative, I play this first so that my units can outlast overwhelming barrage, right? Or for example, if you are at 8 resources and you think they might snoke you, right? Attack pattern delta. Right. I think of it more in that sense, not necessarily to close out a game because you're not attacking, you're just giving units like health and attack, right, for a certain amount. So I think of it as a defensive card. Tech is there for the long game, get access to your resource row because a lot of these units are pretty cheap. Especially if you go long, you can throw him out there and then you could still get 2 3 units off the rip, which is fantastic. In defensive Camino, I actually had this main boarded, put it in the sideboard. This one is a really fun card to have if every Republic unit gets restore 2, and if they're defeated, right, they you can create a new Clone Trooper token. This is really good if you are trying to claw back some health mid game. But also one of the things, again, what I do is if have initiative and I think they're going to overwhelming barrage me, or if they're going to Super Laser Blast or anything, or like something like that, I'm gonna play this because if they defeat me, I'm still going to get something back, which is really, really great. And at worst, you're getting some restores. Great, right? Is it the best card out there? No, but it answers very specific solution. It answers very specific problems that this deck runs up against. Sorry about that. And then finally, I have Traitorous. Again, I know a lot of people don't necessarily like this card. They think it's like not worth it. I think it's worth it, especially against decks that play upgrades. So for me, um, I might save this if I'm playing a blue heroism deck, and they throw out Yoda, and then one turn, and I decide not to take it down. Um, they play it a Jedi lightsaber. Oh, you better 100% believe that I'm going to be taking Traitorous. Or if they have an A-wing with 2 or 4 upgrades on it, taking the A-wing. Really changes the dynamics of the game at the 5 resources. If I feel safe, I'm throwing this in there, and I'm going to do that. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed this deck. I've been playing with it a lot lately, and I've had again so much fun playing it. I hope you do too if you give it a chance. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm always happy to get feedback. And until next time, may the force be with you.